Hello, everyone. My name is Molly Sachs, and on behalf of Campbell & Company, I'd like to welcome you to Giving Tuesday 1, Overview with GiveCampus, the first webinar in our Giving Tuesday series. Before we begin today's webinar, I'd like to quickly go through some logistics for those of you who may be new to our webinars. Please close any programs other than GoToWebinar that are running on your computer. We recommend calling in with a telephone instead of using your computer speakers and moving your cell phone away from your computer. If you experience visual issues, send a chat to Campbell & Company or contact GoToWebinar at the number on your screen. Today's webinar will last 60 minutes and you'll earn 1 continuing education credit that is good with your participation with CFRE International. Within the next 24 hours, you'll receive an email from GoToWebinar that includes information on how to download your certificate. We won't be sharing today's slides, but we will be sending a link to the recording in the follow-up email from GoToWebinar. We welcome questions throughout the webinar. Please use the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel that should be on the right side of your computer screen. We will also hold time at the end of the webinar for Q&A. At this point, I'll hand it off to Sarah Barnes, Director of Marketing and Business Development, who will introduce our guest panelist.
Great. Thank you, Molly. And it's funny, I'm actually sitting right next to Molly, so if you do see me turn my head to her, that's why. But welcome, everyone. We're very excited to have you here. And of course, we're super excited to have Kestrel Linder, the CEO and co-founder of GiveCampus, here with us today. And I want to start with some background on GiveCampus, and I'm going to turn over to Kestrel, who'll give a little bit more of an update or an overview on the platform. But it is a digital fundraising and volunteer management platform used by more than 500 nonprofit educational institutions, including 10 of the top 35 ranked universities and 31 of the top ranked liberal arts colleges. Over the last 3 years, GiveCampus has supported over 1,000 giving days, including more than 500 #GivingTuesday campaigns. And I know that many of you joining this call are starting to prep for this year's Giving Tuesday. And I hope that this is a beneficial resource and webinar for you to listen to. So make sure to send us your questions throughout today's presentation. So Kesha, I'm going to turn over to you to talk a little bit more about GiveCampus before we head into some data and insights regarding Giving Tuesday.
Thanks, Sarah, and it's a pleasure to be with everyone today. I'm sure, like many of you, I am officially starting to count the days down to Giving Tuesday, one of my favorite unofficial holidays on the calendar. GiveCampus, as Sarah mentioned, is a digital fundraising platform designed and built from the ground up for nonprofit educational institutions. Giving Tuesday is certainly among the most popular uses of our platform. As Sarah mentioned, we've supported more than 1,000 giving days just in the last 3 years. Roughly half of those giving days have been carried out on Giving Tuesday itself. We're looking forward to another big year for Giving Tuesday, and as I know Sarah is about to go into some of the stats around Giving Tuesday, we, in concert with our partners at the 92nd Street Y and others who support Giving Tuesday, expect this Giving Tuesday to be even an order of magnitude greater than last year's, which of course was the biggest Giving Tuesday ever. So hopefully today's webinar will get your creative juices flowing, answer any questions that you have about how to prepare and get ready for the big day.
Excellent. Sounds good. Thank you for that quick overview. I'm really excited to dig deep into GiveCampus and take a look at the platform, and I'm sure everybody else on the call is too. So with that, we're going to go through some slides just regarding statistics on Giving Tuesday to lay down the context for today's webinar. But first, overall, we're continuing to see online revenue, and this is online giving overall, growing every year, and it grew by 23% in 2017 after 15% growth in the year before. So we're continuing to see pretty strong growth in the online revenue platform. So it's important as you think about not only Giving Tuesday, but your overall online donation platform to really understand the customer experience, or I should say the donor experience, and make sure that your online platform is really streamlined as much as possible. In our webinars, we have a number of Giving Tuesday webinars coming up this year. We'll be touching on this as we go through them, so make sure to check them out at our website. As we think about email revenue, increased by 24% in 2017 and accounted for 28% of all online giving. What's interesting is that opening rates for fundraising fell at a 1%, so very nominal and almost not even worth mentioning. So email is still a very important channel for us to use. And then mobile traffic continues to grow and accounted for 40% of nonprofit website visitors in 2017. But obviously desktop is still very important. Desktop users will more likely complete a gift and also gave significantly larger gifts on average than mobile gifts. So as you think about your email and online strategy, getting them to an online platform on your website via a user's desktop is still very important. While desktop users represented 50% of the traffic to nonprofit sites, they generated 68% of the donations and 76% of the revenue. So very important. And as we think about Giving Tuesday, I think it's an interesting point that I've read recently is that generosity is a habit, and Giving Tuesday certainly helps to establish this. If you think about retention rates, first-time donors for Giving Tuesday had a retention rate of 25%, while repeat donors had a 60% retention rate. And so what Giving Tuesday does is it helps establish that culture of giving within the nonprofit philanthropic world. And looking at 2017 results, $300 million were raised online, $2.5 million total gifts. So we're continuing to see that increase. $120.40 was the average gift size. That's compared to $107 the year before. So we're definitely seeing an increase in average gift size. 21.7 billion total social media mentions, 150 countries and more actually participated, and then a 27% increase for online giving from 2016. The top sectors that participated and had the highest giving were public and social benefit, human services, education, health, and environment, and animals. And if you look at trends in dollars raised since the start of Giving Tuesday, you see really strong growth year after year. So as you're engaging your donors, as you are communicating with your community, it's really important to be a part of this. And as you think about strategically planning for Giving Tuesday with your team, and then how it correlates with the rest of your fundraising endeavors, it's definitely important to be a part of this journey. And so at this time, we're going to do a poll. And forgive me, I just actually need to see how to do this. Sorry, guys. 1 second. Let me see here. Molly, I'm going to use your computer. Here we are. So in terms of looking at your, hopefully you guys all see the poll online. Your primary objective for Giving Tuesday is it to expand participation, meet a specific dollar goal, increase awareness, break a record, or collect in-kind gifts. And I think all of them are starting to come in. And Molly, maybe you could report on the findings. I think we'll just give a couple more minutes here.
Great, thanks everyone for answering this poll. We have 69% said expand participation and engagement is their primary objective, 17% said meeting a specific dollar goal, 10% increasing awareness, 3% breaking a record.
Great, thank you. I was just made aware that you guys cannot see my screen, so that's not helpful. So forgive me, guys. And I don't quite know why that's happening. So we'll go ahead and close that poll and then make sure that you all can see my screen. Okay. Here we go. All right, are we live now? Okay, I think you should all be able to see. Sorry. Well, hopefully those statistics worked out really well for you. Of course, we're happy to go back to them during our Q&A session, so sorry about that. Can you repeat the findings once more, Molly, from the live poll?
Absolutely. 67% of you said expanding participation and engagement is your primary objective. 20% said meeting a specific dollar goal. 10% increasing awareness, and 3% breaking a record.
Okay, so it looks like that engagement metric is certainly important. So we'll make sure to touch on that with GiveCampus pretty thoroughly. As you think about your overall roadmap, having a methodical roadmap to planning out your Giving Tuesday efforts is really important. And so we've just outlined a pretty simple, basic roadmap that for those of you who may be newer to planning Giving Tuesday, this might be something that is relatively useful for you. For those of you who are experts, this might be a little bit repetitive, but we will have Campbell & Company produces the annual Giving Tuesday toolkit, which will be coming out here shortly in the next month or so, where we do have a more advanced section for this year's edition. So look forward to that. So with that, we have another poll, which we'll go ahead and head into. So this one is, which digital platforms are you using to create awareness and drive donations? All right, they are coming in. 44, 47. Let's see here, we have got 67% have voted. Okay. All right. So it looks like we have, and Molly, do you want to share the results with us?
Absolutely. So 91% of you use email marketing to create awareness and drive donations, 21% mobile text to give, 76% social media, and 24% of you use an online platform such as GiveCampus.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. And then we are going to dive into GiveCampus. And so, Kestrel, are you there?
I am here.
Great. Excellent. So, if you will, Kestrel, can you please give us an overview of the benefits of your tool and what objectives do you think it meets for your clients or for the organizations that you're working with? And then how does GiveCampus tie into institutions' Giving Tuesday objectives?
Yeah, so I think this really boils down to three key priorities that we want every institution, every nonprofit to keep front of mind, whether they're using GiveCampus or not, on Giving Tuesday, or frankly for any giving day or short-term giving challenge that they might run at some other time throughout the year. Obviously, a lot of schools and other nonprofits have started to do their own giving days independent of Giving Tuesday, which is very exciting. The first of those is making it easy for people. Whatever you want people to do on Giving Tuesday, it's exceptionally important that it be easy. And I know that a lot of the goals, which I found very interesting, a lot of folks on the webinar were very interested in engagement, not just raising money, but raising, I'm assuming, awareness and engagement with the brand of your organization. And the reality is that in the year 2018, people are very frugal with their time. They're very frugal with their attention. So if you're hoping to be lucky enough to capture it, you need to be making it very easy for whatever it is that you want them to do, especially if that's giving you money on Giving Tuesday. And that's something that we focus on almost obsessively here at GiveCampus, is making sure that when you're engaging people online, when you're asking them to make a generous charitable contribution, that process from beginning to end is as easy as possible. The second key priority that we really focus on and want nonprofits and schools to focus on Giving Tuesday, or again on some other giving day that you might run throughout the year, is creating that sense of urgency. I think by now everybody knows that one of the reasons Giving Tuesday has become so successful and is so popular is that there's a sense of needing to give or participate or engage, and needing to do so right now. It's Giving Tuesday. It's not Giving Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And finding tools to instill that sense of urgency and convey that sense of urgency. There's some really technically sophisticated ways to do this and some really simple ways to do this with the subject line of your emails and the creative assets that you put together for the day, making sure people know that you're celebrating their generosity and philanthropy and maybe volunteerism today. And today is the only day that they can participate. If you work with a platform or build your own type of website for Giving Tuesday, I would strongly encourage you to have some sort of a countdown clock so that people are reminded after they open your email and read your email and engage with your content that, oh yeah, I only have until midnight tonight to participate if I want to be a part of Giving Tuesday. And a lot of institutions around the country find other ways, very creative ways to do this by offering benefits or recognition or incentives that are tied specifically to their key objective for the day, which again is very commonly either some form of engagement or philanthropy. You only get that recognition or that special something if you happen to participate between midnight and midnight on Giving Tuesday. The third priority that we really focus on at GiveCampus is making it fun. This shouldn't be a transactional experience for people. You can acquire a lot of donors with a transaction, but retaining them is going to be much more difficult 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the road. So we really try to focus on helping institutions provide an environment for people that is richer than simply arriving at a giving form and being asked for your credit card information. You can do this in a variety of ways. One thing that we focus very heavily on, which we'll touch on in just a moment, is content, and especially video content, making sure that people are able to engage with something that you've provided to them on that day. A second big piece of making the experience a little more fun than your average day of giving, if you will, is creating a social environment for people. And this can be accomplished in a number of ways. One that's really simple and that we certainly provide to our partner institutions is letting everybody know who the community of donors is, listing their names in real time, providing things like maps showing where donors are located, showing the total amount of money that all of these people have donated today, showing how many different people have participated, showing different affiliations or affinities that they might have with or for your organization. That can create an environment where when I participate on Giving Tuesday, I know that I'm not participating alone, and we think that's very important. So those are, again, there's probably a much longer list, but if I needed to boil it down to 3 key priorities, that's what we really focus on and what we encourage everybody to focus on Giving Tuesday.
Great. And when you think about content, which I think is what we'll be discussing next.
Yeah, so I mentioned this already. A big piece of Giving Tuesday is creating content. And one of the great things about Giving Tuesday is a lot of the marketing assets that many organizations, especially smaller schools and organizations, will need are available off of the shelf. The organization that drives Giving Tuesday and that created Giving Tuesday, they've done a lot of work to brand this event. It's a globally known and celebrated day of philanthropy. If you have even the slightest bit of bandwidth or resources available to you to produce additional content for Giving Tuesday, the one place we suggest and encourage our partner institutions to put that that bandwidth and those resources is into video content. Again, in the year 2018, sorry to any English majors out there, but people aren't reading like they used to. The likelihood that someone will watch a short video is almost infinitely greater than it is that they will read a paragraph of text online. So if you want to capture somebody's attention, if you want to have an opportunity to make your case for support, to tell your story, and of course to deliver a targeted ask, video is absolutely going to be the best way to do that. The second area of focus when it comes to content on Giving Tuesday, at least for us and our community at GiveCampus, is social media. People are social beings. They spend an inordinate amount of time day in and day out on social media. So creating content that is shareable on social media is extraordinarily important, making sure that if you're asking members of your community and constituents of yours to share with their network of people on Facebook, on Instagram, on Snapchat, even just by text message or over the phone or by email, you want to provide them with content that's easily shareable, simple graphics, things like that. In this realm, one of the things that we try to provide are fun data and what we call infographics. People love to know who's at the top of the leaderboard. People love to know where donors are coming from. Last but not least, people like to create their own content, and professional marketers at Fortune 500 companies will tell you that the most engaging content, the content that is almost assuredly going to get the most attention, is content generated by real people. This can sometimes be really scary for nonprofits and especially for educational institutions to give up some of the control or let go of the control of your message and allow other people to retell your story over and over again in their own words and sometimes in their own voice. But there's enough data out there to sink a ship that says when you allow people to express themselves in an authentic way, you're sure to get more attention from a much broader audience and have a better chance of engaging people. And this is true, by the way, whether it's Giving Tuesday or any other day throughout the year. The Ice Bucket Challenge from several years ago is the penultimate example of the power of user-generated content. None of that was scripted. None of that was produced by Hollywood production crews. It was real people making silly videos of themselves, telling a story, asking other people to participate. And that has a power that you simply cannot replicate with, frankly, any type of professional marketing. So those are the areas we recommend and that we focus on at GiveCampus when it comes to Giving Tuesday and other giving days. And Sarah, if you advance to the next slide, just to hammer home those points, you'll see in the upper left an example of a Giving Day video. We think you should put video front and center when you're communicating with people by email or on social media. You should make it very clear that you have a video for them to watch. So there's almost a reward for clicking through your email. And you can do this in really simple, lightweight ways. Throw a snapshot from that video in your email with a big play button right in the middle so people know, again, there's a light at the end of that click tunnel. And that if they click through, they'll be rewarded with video content to consume. We all know the stats around YouTube, and if anyone here has kids in their teens or their early 20s, we all know they're watching video day in and day out. This is how people consume content on the internet. In the lower left of this slide, we've just highlighted Facebook and text messaging. Because a question we often get from schools in our community is, what channels should we be optimizing for the most? There's been a proliferation of social media platforms over the last 5 or 6 years, lots of places where you can try to capture people's attention. Happy to answer questions about this during the Q&A that I know we'll get to toward the end. But the scientific fact remains that Facebook is absolutely number one when it comes to getting the eyeballs of people over the age of 18. Facebook is the place for that. One beautiful thing about Facebook is that Facebook owns Instagram, and when you're doing posts on one platform or running ads on one platform, it's very, very simple to also be doing those posts or running those ads on the other platform. They're really a two-in-one package, and together there are no other platforms or even combination of platforms that combine to meet the reach and depth, frankly, that you'll get out of Facebook and Instagram. We included the text message or the iMessage icon on this screen because one thing we're seeing quite a few schools in our community get some interesting results from is texting their constituents. GiveCampus is not a texting platform. We do provide tools that make it possible to text people very simply. If you haven't tried this before, I certainly recommend. You don't need to invest in a texting platform, but have your director of development or director of annual giving or other members of your staff on Giving Tuesday, send some text messages. Just do it manually. It's really simple. We can show you how to do it and see what kind of results you get. We'll talk a little bit later about helping you track the efficacy of such efforts, but we think it's certainly worth an experiment. People have their phones in their hand, in front of their faces, in their pockets, pretty much 24 hours a day. So texting can be a way to reach them, but you do want to be careful and very thoughtful with how you do that.
Thanks, Kestrel. This has been definitely an interesting overview. When you think about building and preparing an engaged volunteer corps, which is critical, obviously, for Giving Tuesday, can you share how GiveCampus shows this or achieves this?
Yeah, as we prepared for this webinar, Sarah and everyone on the call today, and tried to think about where are the areas where any nonprofit can get a lot of bang for its buck, volunteers are at the top of the list. No matter what you're doing on Giving Tuesday, no matter if you do Giving Tuesday or do a Giving Day some other day throughout the year, really for any type of fundraising or engagement, the investment that you make in volunteers and a well-equipped, well-trained, and motivated volunteer corps almost always pay off in spades. This is something we focus very intentionally on at GiveCampus, and we try to provide value in a number of ways. The first is by providing best practices for our community of nonprofit educational institutions. How should you be thinking about volunteers? Well, best practice number one, which isn't on this slide, is even if you're recruiting 2 volunteers, and that's all you think you can get for Giving Tuesday, I promise those 2 volunteers, if you do it right, will be worth the time and energy you spend. Mm-hmm. But once you decide to actually go do that, we've got 3 best practices to think about. The first is think outside the box as you recruit volunteers, especially at colleges and universities and K-12 schools. The default, of course, is to recruit alumni as your volunteers, and that is without a doubt a tried and true method. But we've also seen schools generate extraordinary results by recruiting volunteers from amongst the staff and at an educational institution amongst the faculty. And those should be low-hanging fruit for you because those are the people executing on your mission and in many respects benefiting from a great Giving Tuesday effort. Think about parents of your alumni and of your students. Think about your students. If you're an educational institution, these are people who are absolutely benefiting from the generosity of your constituents. All of these different segments of your population and others that I have not mentioned have proven in our experience to be very effective volunteers. And you should think of these people as mouthpieces for your story, as people who are going to amplify your message, as people who are going to help you reach others that you simply cannot reach. On Giving Tuesday, when I open my email inbox, I will have somewhere between 30 and 40 messages by 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Every school, every nonprofit, every charity that I've ever come into contact with will be competing for my time and attention on that day. One thing will surface to the top faster than anything, and that's an email or a text message or a Facebook post from one of my friends. I'm much more likely to pay attention to that. I'm much more likely to click through that outreach, and that's what volunteers provide for you. So they are extraordinarily valuable. Once you've identified and recruited some of these people, our second best practice is make bite-sized asks of them. Don't provide them with a 3-page, 27 bulleted item list of things that you want them to do on Giving Tuesday. If you can't fit it in a very short email or paragraph, or certainly on one page of printed paper with very nice large font that I can read from a far distance, your volunteers probably aren't going to do it. And what we've seen is that volunteers are much more likely to do anything at all if you only ask them to do 1 or 2 things than they are if you ask them to do more than 5 or 6 things. There's something that sets in when people are given too many things to do or too many options to choose from. They become a little paralyzed. They can't decide what to do. Maybe they get intimidated. And the end result is that wonderful prospective volunteer that you recruited ends up not doing anything at all. So what we recommend doing is thinking about what would be the most impactful thing for this particular volunteer or this particular group of volunteers to do. If we were only going to get them to do 1 or maybe at most 2 things, what would those 2 things be? And those 1 or 2 things, don't cheat and say what we want you to do is sub-bullet A, B, C, and D. Make these very clear, discrete actions. For example, we want you to make your gift, of course, and then we're asking you to do 1 thing. Click the Facebook share button, share that you gave, and tell people why you gave, and if you're comfortable, ask them to join you in giving as well. And hey, if you can't think of your own words for this, here is some templated language that we have provided. You can just copy and paste it into that Facebook post. You're ready to rock and roll. That's an example of a bite-sized ask. It's not intimidating. I'm either going to do it or I'm not. I'm not going to be faced with a decision between 8 other options of what you want me to do. And again, in our experience, we believe it's a best practice to make those sorts of bite-sized asks. The third best practice that we share with members of our community and really dive deep on is thinking creatively about how you can incentivize volunteers. This doesn't need to cost money. This doesn't need to be something that you create that's extra. But thinking about how you can offer them a special thanks or some form of recognition for actually going to bat for you on Giving Tuesday can be extraordinarily valuable. And we're actually going to talk a little bit more about that later on in the webinar, but making sure that you're providing someone with a good reason in addition to their love and support for your organization, that can go a really long way on Giving Tuesday. So those are some of the best practices that we focus on with members of our community, with the schools in our community. The second thing that we try to do is make sure that your volunteers are equipped with tools to do the most valuable things they can possibly do for you on Giving Tuesday. And I'm going to focus on 3 categories of tools that we really try to hammer home because we found them to be the most impactful. The first, pretty obvious, making sure that your volunteers can share. They should be able to share wherever they want very, very easily. For a lot of people, and I would argue for most typical, insofar as there is a typical volunteer, For most people, this is going to mean social media. This is going to mean making sure that however you're executing on your Giving Tuesday campaign, there is a button or preferably a couple of buttons to easily share on social media. As I spoke of earlier, at GiveCampus, we really focus on Facebook. We've just seen that platform today in 2018 is still the best place to amplify and spread your message when it comes to social media. If you're not working with GiveCampus or another platform, find a way with your webmaster to get a Facebook share button on your Giving Tuesday page, in your Giving Tuesday email, so that people can share out onto Facebook. If you can go the extra inch or extra mile and include Twitter or Instagram, I would do those as well. Same thing goes for email and text messages. Make sure that it's very easy for your volunteers to spread the word through those channels as well. Social media is big and popular, and people spend a lot of time on social media day in and day out. But we all know, again, they're in their email inbox, they're checking their text messages, that phone is in their hand. You want to make sure your volunteers are able to reach them in those channels. You also want to make sure that your volunteers have some optionality here. Some people are going to really want to share on Facebook. Some people are really going to want to tweet on Twitter. Some people are really going to want to do anything but those two options and will appreciate having email and or text messaging available to them. All of these sharing options, by the way. Sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
No, so sorry. I just had a question regarding text messaging and how you would suggest reporting on that, and any sort of strategies that organizations might be able to employ specific to text message. I know that you mentioned earlier about having a staff member, a team member, simply texting their, perhaps it's their board members or some of their donors. Would love to dig in a little bit more with that with you.
Yeah, so I mean, it really does depend on the tools that you have accessible to you. With GiveCampus as the example that I'm certainly most familiar with, what we do is we provide a button right on the Giving Tuesday page, and that button is replicated on the page that donors get to after making their gift. So they'll see it sort of at the beginning of the process when they start hopefully engaging with your content, and then they'll see it again at the end of the process. All they have to do from a mobile device is click that button, and it will automatically open up their text message feature or app on their phone. They can enter the name or the number of the person or people they want to send a text message to. They can add their own personal message. Our platform will automatically pull in an image from the Giving Tuesday campaign, so content that the nonprofit, or in our case, the school, has provided, so that that text message has a visual to accompany it. And the text message will automatically include a link back to the page. So if I text my 3 best friends on Giving Tuesday, they're going to receive that text message. It's going to come from me. It's going to have an image, and if they click it, it'll take them right to the Giving Tuesday page for the nonprofit or school that I'm asking them to support. So that's what we do at GiveCampus. There are obviously text message platforms that are out there. We're starting to see members of our community experiment with many of those. I would say the jury is still out on the efficacy of those tools. Hopefully we'll see more activity this year and be able to talk about how well they work. But the really lightweight or, simple way to do this, that even if you don't use GiveCampus, even if you don't have a text messaging platform, is again to just equip your staff or volunteers that you've recruited for Giving Tuesday with a bite-sized ask. And that bite-sized ask could be specifically identifying a very short list of people. Don't give them 100 names and phone numbers. They're not going to do that unless they're a really, really super amazing volunteer. Start them with 1 or 2 or maybe just 3 names, or ask them, have a conversation with them, engage them. Say, hey, Sarah, who would you be most comfortable texting if that's your preferred method for outreach? Make sure they've got the phone number. Make sure they've got the message that you or they want to convey on Giving Tuesday. And make sure that that text message has something more than just text. An image goes a long way. When people get an image in a text message from one of their friends or someone that they know, it's a lot more likely that they're going to look at that text message. So including some imagery there is great. And last but not least, make sure that there's a link in that text message. Don't send them what we call a desert island, which is a text message that sends you nowhere. Send them a text message with a link in it that sends them to your Giving Tuesday page so that you can actually convert from those text messages.
Great. Thank you, Castro.
Yeah. The other tools that we really focus on, just to speak to the remaining points on this slide, one is the ability to create content themselves. Not that many volunteers will want to create imagery or videos. Some will, though, especially amongst your most enthusiastic supporters. Provide tools that give them the ability to do that very simply. We have a feature on our platform that allows individuals to post their own video content. They can just record a selfie with their iPhone, click a few times, and that video is posted on the Giving Tuesday page that they're supporting. We also provide tools that make it really easy when you're sharing out onto social media to, again, put your personal flavor or spin in the form of very simple content. The last tool that I wanted to highlight, and this is something that, by now everybody knows about, a match or a challenge gift goes a really long way on Giving Tuesday, or frankly for any digital fundraising campaign, and even for multi-channel campaigns. We provide tools that democratize the matching gift and the challenge gift process and allow any individual to offer their own personalized match or challenge. And Sarah, if you'll advance to the next slide, this is an example of what we show to people who want to go the extra mile and volunteer and support a cause in addition to, or maybe in place of, a charitable gift on Giving Tuesday. Really simple instructions, a couple of different options. You can share, as you see on Facebook or Twitter, by text message or email. You can offer a matching gift or offer a challenge, and you're able to set those up all by yourself right on the website without having to speak to a major gift officer. You can do it yourself, which is really convenient. Or to create what we call a personal plea. That's a personalized or selfie video that you record yourself. These are examples of providing volunteers with tools that they can use on the day to help you spread the word. Again, reach people and audiences that you might not be able to reach very effectively, or in some cases probably can't reach at all. And Sarah, if you go to the next slide, we'll just see some examples of what that actually looks like. So Paul on the right, that's his personal plea video. It's 57 seconds long. It's recorded with an iPhone, asking people to give. On the left side of this slide, you see examples of individuals who have offered personal matches. You'll notice that these matches aren't for millions of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars. They're for hundreds of dollars. And the reason that they're able to be set up on a digital fundraising campaign is not because a staff member devotes hours or days or weeks of time to recruit them and help them be set up. There are tools available to people that let them do it themselves. And that democratization is very powerful when you allow people to, again, carry the water. More often than not, you'll be pleasantly surprised with the results that you receive. The final thing that we do at GiveCampus that I think is really important is provide volunteers and the organizations that they're supporting with a connection to their impact. And we do this in what I believe to be the most direct way. We quantify their impact so that a volunteer who is supporting you on Giving Tuesday will know exactly what they have helped accomplish. And this is an example here that you see on the screen of a volunteer who's able to see that they generated 92 clicks. That means 92 visits to your Giving Tuesday page. 37 of those clicks resulted in a gift, and those 37 gifts resulted in more than $4,000 in charitable giving. Our platform does this for you automatically, for you and your volunteers, and it recognizes volunteers in real time for this impact. And again, I think that recognition and the real-time nature of it is very important. The reason that we focus on this is I and most members of my staff are, believe it or not, volunteers for nonprofits and for the schools that we went to. And in our personal experiences and in talking to other volunteers, one thing that we have heard over the years time and time again is, I'm always happy to share. I'm always happy to do what I'm asked on Giving Tuesday or through another fundraising campaign. But I never know if the work that I've put in has actually yielded any results. We think that to the maximum extent possible, finding ways to quantify, if you can, the impact that your volunteers are having, to show them that impact, and especially if you can do it in real time, we think that's really powerful. A nice byproduct of doing those things is it also allows you to create a sense of friendly competition perhaps amongst your volunteers. Who can drive the most traffic to your Giving Tuesday page? Who can bring in the most donors or the most dollars? And anyone on the call who manages volunteers knows that especially your diehard volunteers, many of them are very competitive people, and you can oftentimes get a lot more out of people when they're trying to show up at the top of your list. The final thing that I'll mention about volunteers, and I touched on this when I highlighted 3 best practices. The third best practice was incentivizing your volunteers. Incentivizing volunteers is a very different game than incentivizing donors. A lot of the considerations that come into play when you have to be careful with how you incentivize donors, it's very different with volunteers. You're incentivizing them to help spread your message, to get other people to participate and give in most cases. So you can be a little freer, a little more creative perhaps with how you incentivize them. We've seen schools have great results incentivizing volunteers with swag. Everybody loves a t-shirt or a tchotchke. Everybody loves a bumper sticker or a magnet for their fridge, or, you know, some weird little gizmo or gadget. And those things typically aren't very expensive. I think coffee mugs are probably the most popular of all items that you can get. And the reason I know that's true is if you open up the average American adult's cabinet, you will find way more coffee mugs than they need, because we all love a good coffee mug with a logo of an organization that we believe in our cabinet. Recognition is a great type of incentive. It doesn't cost you anything. It's probably something you're already doing for other purposes. We try to automate the recognition process on GiveCampus by showing people's names and faces and quantifying the impact that they're having. You can obviously recognize them in many, many, many other ways. Adding, if you do an annual report, adding recognition for your volunteers in there, offering things that people might not be able to get, and making the recognition special for Giving Tuesday is absolutely something we recommend. Another popular type of incentive, tickets and events. People always love a ticket to something. If you want to incentivize volunteers with that, that's another great way to get their motivation up on Giving Tuesday.
And I think one of the things that I'm curious about, as well as I'm sure many people on the line are curious about, is how does GiveCampus track and report on these efforts? And so how does reporting work in order for institutions to understand ROI and then obviously be able to make decisions for next year?
Yeah. So going into Giving Tuesday, one operational or administrative goal that I would encourage you to set for yourselves is try to make sure that you're set up to know afterwards what worked and what didn't. And specifically, try to be in a position that you'll know after Giving Tuesday where the vast majority of your gifts came from. GiveCampus automates nearly all of that for members of our community. I already showed how we are able to track the effectiveness of volunteers, and we're able to do that at the donor level. So if I make a gift on Giving Tuesday because I clicked on Sarah's Facebook post, GiveCampus will tell that story, will expose that data, which is, of course, very, very valuable data to sort of see those connections between members of your community. We also provide tracking for every piece of marketing that you do, whether it's text messages, social media, email marketing, even for your print marketing, your direct mail. We have tools that allow you to track every single one of those individual efforts to be able to see how much traffic they generated, what the conversion rate looked like, how many people clicked that Facebook post, how many of those people made a gift. Who were those specific people who gave because of that Facebook post or because of that 12 p.m. email that you sent? We do this all for members of our community out of the box. If you don't work with us and end up not working with us for Giving Tuesday, I highly encourage you to try to do as much of this as you can, because it's absolutely precious information to be able to look back on Wednesday or maybe Thursday after you sleep on Wednesday and say, oh, okay, on Tuesday, this is what worked and this is what didn't.
Yeah, I would just add to that, Kestrel, that for some of the smaller or medium-sized organizations who perhaps they have a limited resources, is just to really think about those top 3 metrics and make sure that they tie back to your objectives in terms of your overall Giving Tuesday strategies, and then hopefully that will help determine some planning for the next year and also which platforms are driving the most conversions or ROI.
Absolutely.
And then in terms of, I think you touched on mobile before, and so as I read earlier, that having this effort be mobile accessible and for people to be able to leverage their mobiles with respects to giving. And especially as people are getting more and more comfortable with making financial transactions on their phone. Can you talk a little bit more about GiveCampus's mobile efforts and functionality, as well as perhaps its UX?
Yeah, this is, if people take nothing else home from this webinar, perhaps the most valuable takeaway is when you're thinking about Giving Tuesday, insofar as Giving Tuesday is a digital or largely a digital effort for you, you've got to understand that digital means mobile. Last year, 46% of all of the traffic we saw on Giving Tuesday was coming from mobile devices. That number's been going steadily up year after year after year. I suspect this will be the year it breaks the 50% threshold. That means more than half of the people who are showing up on your Giving Tuesday page are seeing that page on a mobile device. And it's scary to think about, but that number should be higher for everybody, because about 3/4 of the email that people are opening and about 85% of the social media that they're consuming is being consumed on mobile devices. So if you're marketing to them in those channels, if they're not getting to your Giving Tuesday page, it's because they're not compelled or you haven't done a good enough job reaching them on their mobile device through email or on social media. So you really want to think about the full experience, from the email they get or the social media post or the text message, whatever it is. Think about, what does every step of the process look like on a mobile device? And of course, one that you can't ignore is ensuring that you're making it very, very, very easy to give. If people can't give on mobile, they're not going to open up their laptop. This is something that we've invested very heavily in at GiveCampus, making sure that it's very easy for people on mobile devices to give. Several months ago, we became the first and only educational fundraising platform in the world to offer support for all of the most popular and most widely used digital wallets. And if you're not familiar with a digital wallet or with that terminology, I'm talking about Apple Pay, I'm talking about Google Pay, and I'm talking about Samsung Pay. There are some others, but those are the three big ones. Each of these digital wallets allows people to check out, whether they're buying something or giving to your organization on Giving Tuesday, without having to enter their payment information. And that is a step change difference. The amount of friction that a donor experiences when they have to pull out their credit card or find their credit card or think about how much credit they have left, or this isn't as common as it used to be, find a checkbook or something like that. There's a major, major difference between that experience and, Sarah, if you advance to the next slide, the experience of making a gift without having to do that, where you provide the demographic information that your school or nonprofit wants, but when you advance to that checkout stage in the process, you see that Apple Pay button, and all you have to do is click that Apple Pay button, press your thumb on your phone, and you've just finished the transaction. We believe that making it that easy for people to give is extraordinarily important, and we see those results day in and day out on GiveCampus. We're really excited that this will be the first Giving Tuesday where all of the members of our community at GiveCampus will be able to accept gifts with Apple Pay, with Google Pay, and with Samsung Pay. We think that's going to be a game changer.
Yeah, I always recommend organizations to give their phone to a friend and see how long it takes them to make a donation, because the experience to the person working at the organization versus the experience of a friend is much different, and time it and to see how long it takes and where are the friction areas. So even in the respects of an institution's own ability to drive that digital online donation, to test it out is really important.
Yeah, I have my mom do it, which is the same idea. You know, someone who is maybe unfamiliar and unforgiving of inefficiencies in the process. That's a great exercise.
Yeah. I think we're up to Q&A. Am I right on that, Kestrel? Is there anything else that you want to add? I had a quick question, but anything else on your end, Kestrel? I know it's crazy. We're 3 minutes from being done here.
Yeah, I would just return to the points that I started with, you know, again, thinking about Giving Tuesday. If you focus on just a few things on Giving Tuesday, what I would encourage you to do, regardless of whether you're a member of our community or not, but make it easy for people. Create that sense of urgency. This is the day and the only day for this. And try to make it fun. You can do all of those things without breaking the bank, and your results will be astoundingly enhanced if you accomplish each of those three things this year. Great.
Well, Kestrel, thanks for joining us. I do have a couple of questions. I'll get to some of our audience questions, and then I have one other one if we get to it. But regarding Gen Z as the next very important population or I guess generational cohort that we will be looking at from a philanthropic perspective, what suggestions do you have for reaching them? Obviously, the tool that GiveCampus provides is very mobile accessible, which is certainly important. But anything you might want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, when you're thinking about the youngest generations, millennials, people sort of born from the early 80s and onward, and then post-millennials or Gen Z, which are largely understood as people born 1997 or after. And that population, if you do the math in your head, you realize those are people who are just the eldest of whom are just starting to graduate from college, enter the labor force, have disposable income, and be prospective donors for our organizations. Obviously, this is a digital native population. Most of these people, and I'm sort of on the cusp between millennials and Gen X, they grew up with cell phones and iPads and watching videos and social media, and a very large percentage of them are almost entirely mobile only when it comes to their communications, their social networking, their use of technology. They might have a laptop or a desktop for their job, but the vast majority of what they do outside of work is happening on their iPhone or on their Samsung Galaxy. So when you think about engaging them, how you're going to reach them, where you're going to reach them, and obviously what type of an experience you're going to optimize for, you absolutely have to be thinking about that mobile device. Can they open that email easily? Can they click through? Can they watch a video? Can they easily make their gift? Can they easily share by social media or text message to help you amplify your message? That's a mobile experience for an ever-increasing share of our prospective donors.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Next question is, we don't have a strong social media following. Can we still be successful on Giving Tuesday? I have some thoughts on that, but Kestrel, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think the reality is a strong social media following certainly isn't going to hurt anyone on Giving Tuesday. It certainly can be an asset. But because of the way Facebook and Instagram, I would sort of include under the Facebook umbrella, of course, because of the way those platforms work, they have been making it, it's always been difficult, but they've made it even harder over the course of the last year, especially for organizations to show up in people's news feeds, which is to say, if I'm an organization, if I do a post, to actually get into the news feed of my targeted audience. And unless you're spending a lot of money promoting your posts or running ads, your chances of showing up are pretty slim, frankly. And this is where I feel that volunteers can more than make up the difference for you. Because you know what shows up in my Facebook news feed? My friends. Not the organizations that I follow or have liked on Facebook. I almost never see their posts. What I see when I open up Facebook 3 or 4 times a day, that's my confession for today, is I see posts from my friends. So the more you can find real people, individuals, again, think outside the box as you're recruiting them to do the sharing for you, the more successful you will be.
I'd also add to that even if you think, even if resources are limited, and that an organization's social media following isn't as strong as perhaps others, that leveraging email and with having an effective subject header and content, I think can be really effective too. So I just wanted to add that. And then my last question for you, Kestrel, is one on data privacy and security. As we see efforts in the EU and obviously how that's the GDPR has taken an influence on the United States. Just curious about GiveCampus's overall position and how security is of importance within the tool.
Yeah, I mean, this is of utmost importance for us. We are a platform or a marketplace where nonprofit educational institutions connect with their donors, where people make charitable gifts, and we are capturing data on behalf of institutions so that they can identify their donors, recognize them, steward them, of course, update their records and databases, and we take the privacy of that information and the security of that information very, very seriously. So we do everything in our power to make sure that it's safe and secure, and as part of that, to make sure that while we're building functionality to help you create that fun social environment that you want to have and where you want your volunteers to be able to do important work on your behalf, we are maintaining the appropriate level of privacy and, in some cases, anonymity for your donors. We work not only with schools in the United States, but also with schools in about half a dozen foreign countries, including in the EU. So we've been way ahead of the curve, I think, when it comes to GDPR and meeting not only the requirements of GDPR, but the security and frankly, the intent of GDPR, which is to ensure that platforms like GiveCampus and, the many, many others that are out there, not just for nonprofit fundraising, but far beyond that, are being careful, diligent stewards of the data that they collect and being very thoughtful with what they do with it. The only thing that we do with the data that's collected through GiveCampus is operate the GiveCampus platform and provide data about the donors to the beneficiaries of their gifts, to the schools and nonprofits that we support. That's our philosophy around data, and I think that, certainly important to us to stay true to that as a platform where, again, as we think of it, we're connecting schools and nonprofits with donors.
Great. Well, Kestrel, thank you so much for your time today. I think it was a very interesting session. It certainly went quickly for me. And for everyone else on the line, thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, you can see our email addresses on the screen. We'd be happy to hear from you. We make sure to check out our website where we have a full series of Giving Tuesday webinars. They're actually 30-minute sessions that really dig into different aspects of Giving Tuesday. So with that, I hope you guys have a great fall. And Kestrel, thank you again. We'll be in touch.
Thanks, and good luck, everyone.
Thanks.